Alright, I'm Man0 for the win here, and ignore my mouse movements right now because I'm actually re-recording all this audio from the original video. Now guys, does anyone remember the 1990s 16-bit console wars against the SNES and the Sega Genesis? Because back then, it was always up in the air. What was the better console? Now, that's long gone. That's a debate for another day that I'm never probably ever going to cover. But one thing I will cover is the remakes of both those consoles. Yes, they have both had remakes. At being the Sega Genesis, wow, creative name, man, they changed that. Or the Super Nintendo Entertainment System Classic, which really didn't change anything either. But anyways, we will see which is the better console. Let's get into it. Starting off with the Sega Genesis, it's small, compact, easy to transport, which is very nice. And also there is a small slot in the Sega Genesis where you can put old Sega Genesis cartridges inside there if you want to play those old games again. So that's a very nice add-on to it. Now, moving on to the controllers. The controllers themselves felt very nice. The buttons are good. The D-pad was good, the start and select buttons felt nice, and the controller was wireless, which you think would be a plus, but in the end, it was very annoying, because the way they connected is there was a light, apparently trying to connect to the Sega Genesis, and if your controller is not facing perfectly up, trying to connect to that Sega Genesis, it won't work. Which I had many problems with while playing on the Sega Genesis. Which, yes, is annoying, but I did get over it and just kept my hands, like, right in the middle, floating in the air. Which is not something you should need to do to play a game. So, take it how you will. I don't find that as a plus that you need to keep your hand in the same position. But, I don't know, maybe you like keeping your hand still for hours. Be my guest, I don't care. And for the SNES Classic, once again, the console itself, small, compact, easy to transport around, which is very nice again. But the controllers this time, oh boy, they were something. Now, once again, buttons, perfectly fine, except start and select. Those were kinda iffy. But the real kicker is the wire. Now, yes, there are wireless controllers that Nintendo has sold for the SNES Classic, but those have to be sold separately. And I did not buy anything separately when I first got these, so I dealt with this wire. Now, you would think it's perfectly okay to have a wire and everything. And it might have just been annoying for me, but I felt like the wire was a little short. Because the wire never reached how far I wanted it to reach. Like, it's definitely shorter than what you would expect, like, with a GameCube controller or an N64 controller. It seems a lot shorter than both of those. Now that I've talked about both of those consoles, let's get into games. Alright, starting off with the Sega Genesis, it has 80 games built into it already, and you have the ability to add more games into it, but I'm only judging it on the games it is given to me already. Now, moving on to the SNES. Now, the SNES Classic only has 21 games, with one of those games being locked until you clear Stage 1 in Star Fox. So, you would think that the SNES is losing here, but it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And where the Sega Genesis may have a lot of quantity, quality is the question right now. Now, talking about games on the Genesis is very subjective, because there are many different varieties of games on there. There's platformers, there are beat-em-ups, there's on-rail shooters, there's just typical gunner games. There is a huge variety of games on the Sega Genesis, which means that I'm not going to like all the games, you're probably not going to like all the games, and that's perfectly okay. But in my opinion, the Sega Genesis was very lacking in games that I enjoyed. Now, I'm not saying I hated all of them. There were many good games. There was Mortal Kombat. There was Alex Kidd. There was Altered Beast. There was the Sonic games. There was a game called Alien Storm. and there were many more games. But that's kind of where it ends for me. There were many games on there, and I only liked probably a seventh of the games. So maybe someone else could shed some light on this and say that there was a lot more games than I'm making it sound like. But in my opinion, it was very lacking. Now, the reason the Sega Genesis isn't out of the competition already is because of what I said. There was a variety of games on there, which means that anyone could go pick up this console and at least find one game that they like on here. There's platformers for people that like platformers. There's beat 'em ups for people that like beat 'em ups. Or if you have someone that doesn't like any of those, hey, they could play a game of chess. They could play a game of checkers. They could play Mahjong, for freak's sake. I don't know why someone would want to play that, but they could if they wanted to. And that's something that you gotta acknowledge. That they made it so anyone could pick up this console and at least play some game on here that will keep them busy for hours. Which is something that you gotta acknowledge. Now, if we're talking about games, the SNES Classic destroys. There were so many good titles on there, like Star Fox, Super Mario Kart, Super Punch-Out, Super Metroid, Super Mario RPG, Kirby Superstar. There was Super Mario World. Wow, there's a lot of titles with the word super in there, isn't there? Huh. Oh well. Anyway, there's also The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, there's Yoshi's Island, there was Donkey Kong Country, and there was, as the unreleased, Star Fox 2, and oh my god, guys, I love Earthbound. Seriously, this is one of my favorite games of all time, guys. So, this might be a little personal bias, but this kind of brought the SNES up a little bit more. Yeah. But after all of the games I just named, there are still a whole 10 more, probably, that are also great games that anyone would probably love to play. So, after all of these, there is nothing else to compare the Sega Genesis and the SNES by. Let's see which one I decided would be the best console remake out of both of those. Now, I thought long and hard about this, guys, and in my opinion, the best console remake out of the two was the SNES Classic. Now, the SNES Classic was just better in my opinion. The games were amazing. Every single game I played on there, I loved. There was no games on there I thought somewhat of, except Super Metroid, which I wasn't a huge fan of the Metroid series in the first place, but I still gave it a chance. And it was still a pretty good game. But, now, going back to the Sega Genesis, there's nothing wrong with the console. I enjoyed playing on there too. Here's how I see it. If you enjoy platformers and just simple, fun Nintendo games, basically, if you have Nintendo games now, they have not changed from back in the SNES days. So, if you enjoy games from Nintendo now, I bet you will enjoy these games the same. Now, if we're talking about the Genesis here, the Genesis did have variety, and I will give it that. There was a huge variety of games that I love to play on there too. But here as I see it, if you have a huge family of people with all different opinions on what games they like, I say get the Sega Genesis remake, because there's a huge variety and basically anyone can play on there. If you are one person that just keeps the console to yourself and will play on your own, then I say get the SNES Classic, because there are a lot better titles on there compared to the Genesis. Or if you have the money, just buy them both, because both of them are great. I will definitely keep both of them. I'm not getting rid of either one, mostly because they were both like $80, and I'm not selling either of those for half its price, please. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. That is all, and goodbye.